Generally, people either love Tonya or are not big fans. Just like people either love America or they're not big fans.
Tanya's my fifth child from husband number 4. Drove her to competitions, practices, sewed her all her costumes. But to her, her mother's a monster.
Most people's impression of me. That I'm a real person.
If you had asked me what sports story would have made a great film, the saga of Tonya Harding would not have been on my mind. As far as I'm concerned, the tempestuous career Harding had on the ice and the question of her involvement in the attack on skater Nancy Kerrigan frankly involved a lot of people being on camera who shouldn't have been, everything wrong with the mass media, and it probably set feminism back by 3 decades. Hi, I'm Whitaker Martin of Whideo Reviews, and you're watching the latest Second Look, a series where I review movies that are underrated, underseen, or misunderstood. And today's feature is the 2017 film I, Tonya, which is based on true events. Very overblown true events that I don't really care for. So in reviewing this film, I'm not going to give a recap on accuracy. But rather, I'd like to concentrate on what makes this film so uniquely great. I'm going to start by introducing characters rather than plot lines. The central character is Tonya Harding, played by Margot Robbie. Despite a rather harsh upbringing, Harding proved to be a natural in the sport of figure skating, earning national accolades for her performances, but also criticism for her unconventional style. Robbie does some of her own ice skating in this film, with difficult turns and tricks being done by a stunt double.
Hate me and Leanne Fallon scored higher.
You're different.
I'm not dressing like a retarded tooth fairy.
The judges expect a conventional.
I want to be conventional.
And your scores reflect that.
If I did the triple axel, they'd have to give me my fucking scores. Sometimes I can.
Both fueling and complicating her rise is her mother, Lavona Golden, played icily by Allison Janney. Lavona is heavy with the drinking, the smoking, the berating, and, well, see for yourself.
Outskated the other girl.
Skated like a graceless bull dyke. I was embarrassed for you.
Sorry.
Your father's not paying alimony, you know. Every penny I make, every penny goes to your skating, and you weren't even fucking trying.
I said I was sorry.
Don't talk back to me.
I should probably also note that Lavona was divorced, and that the family did not have much money. In part because of the abuse she suffers, Tonya is drawn to one of the few people to show her affection, Jeff Gillespie, played by Sebastian Stan. He may be showing affection now, but this will turn into a deeply abusive relationship.
Where the fuck are my Dove bars?
We can't afford them. Eskimo pie is just as good.
I'm America's best figure skater. I don't want Eskimo pie. I wanted a... Jesus, when was the last time you showered? I just wanted a fucking Dove bar.
One of the few individuals who does consistently believe in Tonya is her first coach, Diane Rawlinson, played by Julianne Nicholson. Oftentimes, she seems to be the only sane person in an increasingly messed up situation.
The Olympic Committee announced today that the next Olympics are going to be in 2 years instead of 4. Too out of shape. Pear is a shape. The world is giving you a second chance. I know you don't believe in them, but I do.
The story, in short, covers the skating career of Tonya Harding. We see the hardships she endured and the triumphs she pulled off on her way to the top, most notably by pulling off a difficult spin called the triple axel in a 1991 competition. We also see the downslide of her career, 2 disappointing finishes in the 1992 and 1994 Olympics, and most notoriously, an attack on another American skater, Nancy Kerrigan, in which Tonya was maybe involved? This attack is what made Harding so infamous, as well as a national punchline, and a fair amount of the second half of the film does center around the lead up to and aftermath of this attack. The film even has some fun with the audience members who may be relishing watching this scene.
That leads, it's what you all came for, folks, the fucking incident.
The incident.
The fucking incident.
Everyone remembers the incident differently, and that's a fact. Some people, honest to God, remember Tonya whacking Nancy herself.
For those who may solely be interested in this picture because of the incident, I will assure you that this portion of the story is well acted, well scripted, and well directed. But let's step back for a bit. Because Tonya has a lot of good things to offer. And I think it's important we look at those details rather than just the juicy ones. The Steven Rogers screenplay tells this story both in flashback and with voiceover narration. Several times, characters will address the camera directly. The film may be called I, Tonya, and we do appropriately get a lot of her perspective, but throw in the viewpoints of her coach, her mother, her ex-husband, his quote-unquote friend, and a beat reporter, slickly played by Bobby Cannavale, and you get several narrators, possibly unreliable ones. The stories aren't always matching.
He was the first boy I ever loved. The only catch was...
Beat the living hell out of me.
I never hit her. That's not me. I'm actually a pretty meek guy. She hit me, cracked the wallet, fired a gun at me too.
This is bullshit. I never did this.
The way this film is narrated does give it a dry, jokey tone, which I very much believe is the right call. This story can be interpreted from a comedic angle. Some ridiculous things did happen, and it certainly gives the pacing of the film a greater zest than it might have had otherwise with a straightforward telling. Since several stories still don't match to this day, why not find the satire in all of this? In fact, one could argue there's another narrator, director Craig Gillespie.
So I'd broken off my skate blade 2 days before in practice, and they put it back on a little off. So all my landings were off. All of them. That wasn't my fault.
The satire of this film is very well played, and the film knows what to target. It's the lack of personal accountability, the overzealotry of the mass media, the incompetence of the criminal players, even the sport of figure skating itself. Credit also needs to go to editor Tatiana S. Regal for editing this all together. Getting the timing of these shots correct to let the satire shine through is not easy, but she pulls it off with aplomb and was appropriately Oscar nominated. But the story isn't always satirical. In fact, it's often quite dark and serious. This is the tale of someone who had it rough and didn't get a lot of breaks. And the film does spend plenty of time to find the humanity of Tonya Harding. I am aware that Tonya Price, as she is now known, was extensively interviewed by Steven Rogers when he wrote the screenplay, but I don't think there's a conflict of interest going on. Again, considering the multiple perspectives and the satirical hits, this is not an exoneration of her decisions. What we do get is a far greater understanding of her upbringing and the factors that were consistently working against her.
When I was a kid, did you ever love me or anything?
You think Sonia Henny's mother loved her? Poor fucking you. I didn't stay home making apple brown betties. No, I made you a champion. Knowing you'd hate me for it. That's the sacrifice a mother makes. I wish I'd had a mother like me instead of nice.
Let's get into the characters and casting. Aussie actress Margot Robbie is superb as the Pacific Northwestern Tonya and does a great job going through the emotions. She consistently maintains the third dimension with this character, from Tanya's naivete in the early stages to her extreme bitterness in her later life. Be on the lookout for a scene near the end when, after Harding is delivered a surprising verdict, Robbie is really good at showing the grief stage of bargaining. Well-deserved Oscar nomination. Actress Allison Janney won an Oscar for portraying the tyrannical Lavona, and while the character is somewhat two-dimensional, it's also hard to argue with the results. Lavona represents the worst of sports parenting, and I have to admit that, upon seeing a still image of Allison Janney after watching the film, I involuntarily shuddered. Sebastian Stan's Jeff Gillespie seems to be of two worlds. It's easy to fall for his mild-mannered temperament, but beneath that is a monstrous impulse. Pretty scary to think about. I think Stan's really good at getting this duality down. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the architect of the attack, Sean Eckhart, played by Michigan native Paul Walter Hauser. This is probably the closest we get to a comedic relief character, and I really appreciate how much Paul dials up the looniness of this guy.
Relax. Everything is great. Yes, my parents did tape over my favorite episode of Star Trek to record the CNN coverage, but I'm keeping it together.
You're a fucking idiot.
Oh, shit. We gotta get those guys out of Detroit, okay? Shane and Derek, they're just stuck there. They don't have any money. 4 steps ahead.
Paul, from one Michigander to another, you do our state proud. I'll conclude by answering the question, how much of this film is accurate? Well, that might be a matter of personal interpretation. The film plays with expectations of, quote-unquote, truth. At one point, a character remarks, there is no such thing as truth. Everyone has their own truth, and that's the effing truth. We, the audience, are left to make our own conclusions on what happened, even if they're dark or inaccurate. And that, I think, is a wise way for director Craig Gillespie and writer Stephen Rogers to add thematic depth to a supremely tabloid-esque story. We may have come up with our own ideas in 1994, but there were people and stakes involved. These two have come up with the right mixture of satire and seriousness to turn this overblown story into great cinema, and the casting is spot on too. Whether you witnessed the news story of Tonya Harding back in 1994 and want to see it unfold on the big screen, or you're unfamiliar with the events and just want to watch an atypical sports story, you're bound to get something out of I, Tonya. I commend everyone for pulling this off.
I mean, there were people standing up. I mean, I was just, for the first time, I knew I was the best figure skater in the world at one point in time.
So what did you think about I, Tonya? Go ahead and leave a comment. And while you're at it, is there a film you think deserves a second look? Subscribe to Whideo Reviews, and thanks for watching this latest installment of Second Look. My name is Whitaker Martin, and I will see you next time.